Greetings from Tanzania. If you're watching this, it means Nick and I couldn't get the technology to work so that I could speak to you live. But nonetheless, here I am. As Nick or somebody else may have told you, I'm spending 9 months traveling around the world with my family. We've made it as far as East Africa. I'll be back in June, and I look forward to re-engaging on all cylinders with the Centrist project. This is just too important to step aside from. I'm sorely disappointed not to be with you in Chicago. One of the things we've talked about from the very beginning is doing a Centrist Project Summit, in part because there's such a synergy between all the different kinds of groups working on tasks related to advancing the centrist agenda and making governance work again. On the other hand, I'm extraordinarily gratified that it's happening because I appreciate the energy that Nick has brought to the project. I want to thank Greg for all of his work, for leading the way as a candidate in Kansas, and so on. So it's wonderful for me to be as far away as I am and to see all the excitement of what's happening back in Chicago. I thought I'd make just a couple quick points. This can't be a long talk because I'm going to have to upload it. And the high-speed Wi-Fi here in Tanzania, and by the way, this is not a green screen that you're watching. Those are actually African sounds in the background. God knows what else is going to happen. There were monkeys not long ago. In any event, I thought I'd make a couple quick points, mostly just to thank you all for being in the room. The first, which I won't belabor because it's so obvious, is that as bad as I thought the political situation was when I wrote the Centrist Manifesto, it's clearly gotten worse. I naively imagined it couldn't get any worse. I imagined maybe we'd hit bottom and that we'd troll along that bottom for a while, but clearly what we have seen in the last presidential election and since is a new low, and a dangerous low for American politics. To put a finer point on it, both of the two political parties are in a complete freefall, morally, intellectually, from a governance standpoint. The Republicans have clearly decided that being in the majority, that being in power is far more important than most of their principles. This is a party that stood for free trade, for high-skill immigration, for a host of other things that they have jettisoned in the name of being the party in power. On other fronts, such as their relationship with government, they've taken one of the most important principles of the Republican Party, namely a healthy skepticism for government and what government can accomplish, and just chucked that out and allowed it to be bastardized into this notion that government is always bad, that it's the enemy. And that's a force that's incompatible with governing in the 21st century. Over on the Democratic side, as much as they like to pillory President Trump, and we know how much fodder there is there, the fact remains that the party of FDR has lost the working class, particularly the white working class. That we can say that Hillary Clinton was not a very strong candidate. That's probably true. But the reality is that the message of that party is a complete muddle as well. They may do well in midterm elections by running against Trump, but that's very different than running on an uplifting message that's coherent, that's well prepared for what lies ahead in the post-industrial economy. They're really nowhere in terms of persuading Americans that they have a roadmap for prosperity, for inclusiveness, and so on. So we're in a tough spot. For us, I think that's an opportunity. I think for just a couple minutes, I'll speak about the challenges that we have to take advantage of with regard to that opportunity. The first is a set of paradoxes, and you all in the room can figure this out. But on the one hand, we clearly need to continue our work making an emotional bond with people so that they feel the same kind of emotional attachment to what we're trying to do as they do with a political party. A sense of belonging, a sense of empowerment. That we don't want people reading our briefing book saying, yes, I agree with these 6 bullet points and those 7 bullet points. That's not how people make political decisions. We want to reach them on an emotional level and get them excited about what we're doing. At the same time, and this is the paradox, because the two parties are so intellectually adrift, because really much of what they're now saying makes no sense at all, and I'm saying that as somebody who spends most of my days thinking about public policy, there is an opportunity for us to create and sell an agenda that just makes a lot more sense to a lot more people. We need to continue to expound on the fact that being fiscally responsible, not running up a debt that's going to endanger the country, destabilize global markets, and leave a lot of debt to our children is perfectly compatible with also not sacrificing the environment in ways that are going to leave future generations living worse than they would otherwise. We can sell people on the fact that being pro-market, that doing everything possible to create wealth is not incompatible with providing protections for the people who are displaced by that vibrant economy. And it's not at all incompatible with making sure that we're offering preschool education and other things so that people have the skills to participate in that high skill economy. So we must package a set of ideas that people look at and say, you know what, that is what we need to do in the 21st century. And then they feel it as well in their gut. So that's what we aspire to. People in the room need to and me when I get back, need to constantly be working on those parallel challenges and if, to the extent we can, make them work together. Other things that we need to do, first and foremost, it's candidates, candidates, candidates. We have learned over and over again that nothing spreads our message like a person in a specific race, talking about specific policies, mentioning centrists, ideally speaking about other people in other races who are carrying the same mantle. People conceptually appreciate what we're doing, but as soon as somebody gets in the race, as we saw firsthand when Greg was doing well in Kansas, that is the best messenger that we can offer. Ideally, we want to get to a place where we have several candidates running across different states, different races, and people can look at that and say, wow, there is something here. There's a movement here that I want to be a part of. It's also true that we need to lash together all the boats of the different groups working on procedural reforms. There's much more power in this package of things that will deliver better governance, be it top two primaries, getting rid of gerrymandering, other kinds of reforms, promoting independent ballot access, getting presidential candidates in the debates, independent presidential candidates. People can look across those reforms and say, okay, all of those things I understand as being pieces of a set of solutions that are going to give us better governance, that are going to connect what I want as an American to better outcomes in a systematic kind of way. That each of us is laboring, doing very, very important work together. There's a package of things that I think we can sell very effectively. And so we have to share data, we have to share mailing lists, we have to share words and phrases that work, focus group results, all kinds of things that we learn in our individual efforts that are going to help other people doing similar kinds of projects. Last, I think I just want to encourage you all by saying that there's nothing about this process that's easy. You know, maybe that's something you all well know, but that it's not going to be linear. And the one thing that keeps me hopeful is knowing that if you get to a certain point, if you elect that first candidate, the next three candidates become much easier. If you elect the first three candidates, then you're going to get a couple defections from the Republicans or the Democrats. If you get a couple of key procedural reforms, that makes it easier for our candidates to get elected. That all this stuff feeds on itself. One of the things that we learned in Greg's race in Kansas is when you get above a certain point, he describes it, I think, quite accurately as kind of breaking out of the orbit. People look at you and say, all right, this guy might work. He might win. And therefore, my support for him is not throwing away my vote. Then, of course, you go much higher in the polls. In his race, the Democrat actually dropped out. But I think what you find is success begets success in a way that means those early wins will be magnified many times over. My hope is the same thing will be true when you have a candidate or two who win, that those early successes will not lead to just another success. They will lead to 3 or 4 successes. So what I urge you to do, as you look at this formidable mountain of things that we have to do to make the system work better, is to remember the current system is broken. We're offering something that is genuinely better. There are no other meaningful options out there that I'm aware of. So we're doing the right thing, and when it begins to work, and it will, it's going to get a lot easier, and people are going to recognize that this is the path to better governance. History works that way. We're at an inflection point. It's something like the Republican Party didn't happen over 50 years. It happened over a very short period of time when people realized that the political parties they had were unable to deal with the slavery issue. I believe we're at a similar inflection point. We're all working hard to get us to a better place. I appreciate that effort. As I said at the outset, I'm really sorry that I can't be with you in Chicago. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much. And I cannot wait to get back in June to re-engage with the Centrist Project and all the work that you're doing. Thank you, good luck, and welcome, as I said, to Chicago.